Becoming a millionaire is the dream. But for some, reaching the finish line is just an opportunity to trip over their own feet in spectacular fashion. We're counting down 49 true stories of people who had their hands on a fortune, only to let it slip away through greed, paranoia, or pure, unfiltered stupidity. This isn't bad luck. This is a masterclass in failure. 1. Imagine hitting a £9.5 million jackpot. Your first thought probably isn't, how fast can I set this on fire? But for one man in England, that was apparently the secret game plan. He immediately launched himself into the kind of rock star lifestyle fueled by terrible investments and parties so epic they would make Caligula take notes. He wasn't just spending. He was waging a full-scale war on his bank account. Within a few years, the entire fortune had evaporated. He didn't just stumble back to his old life, he speed ran his way back to poverty, ending up as a coalman again. He literally went from millionaire to medieval peasant in record time. 2. After a British couple bagged a £1.8 million jackpot, they decided to invest not in stocks or real estate, but in karma. Convinced that giving the money away would bring them cosmic brownie points, they showered friends and family with cash. Unfortunately, the universe's accounting department must have been on vacation. In just a few years, they were utterly broke, subsisting on canned soup and completely abandoned by the very people whose lives they had funded. They learned a harsh lesson. When you hand out free money, the only thing you're guaranteed to get back is an empty wallet. 3. You know what's better than 19 Canadian construction workers winning a $50 million lottery? Apparently, for the one guy who bought the ticket, it was being the only one to win it. He decided the pool part of lottery pool was merely a suggestion and claimed the entire prize for himself. This masterstroke of treachery didn't land him on a yacht. It landed him in a year-long legal inferno. Friendships were nuked from orbit, and a colossal chunk of the winnings was gleefully devoured by lawyers. His genius plan to get all the money for himself resulted in everyone, especially him, getting a whole lot less. 4. Stephen Cohen was a criminal genius for a minute. He managed to steal the domain name sex.com, a piece of digital real estate that gushed money like a broken oil well. He was set for life. All he had to do was disappear. But then his brain's stupidity circuit kicked into overdrive. Instead of vanishing to an island with no extradition treaty, he fled to Mexico in a move straight out of a bad spy movie and was promptly arrested. A $65 million judgment later, his empire was gone. He essentially built a money printing machine and then called the cops to report a noise complaint on himself. 5. Inheriting a priceless collection of rare, vintage wine is like being handed a treasure map where X marks a life of opulent luxury. The person who inherited this particular collection, however, decided to store that treasure next to the toaster. By keeping the entire fortune in his kitchen, the constant temperature swings from the stove and refrigerator slowly murdered every single bottle. He methodically transformed a multi-million-dollar collection of liquid history into the world's most expensive stash of salad dressing. It wasn't a tragedy, it was a culinary massacre born of sheer ignorance. 6. Sometimes you can lose a fortune you never even knew you had. After a modest $500 win, one man swaggered into a pawn shop to buy a gold chain, the universal symbol of, I have disposable income now. He paid for his shiny new trinket with his winnings, including a crisp $100 bill. The pawn shop owner's eyes must have lit up like a slot machine. The bill wasn't just money, it was a rare collectible worth thousands. The man walked out feeling like a king, completely unaware he'd just traded a hidden treasure for a cheap bauble. 7. Finding a pristine 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card in a wall is the collectible equivalent of discovering the Holy Grail. It's a multi-million-dollar miracle. So what do you do with such a find? If you're this brother and sister duo, you immediately start a screaming match over who owns it. Instead of calling an auction house, they engaged in a petty tug-of-war. During the argument, the priceless card was ripped cleanly in half. In a single moment of rage, they turned a lottery ticket to a life of luxury into two worthless pieces of cardboard. A true masterclass in snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. 8. Let's talk about having a bad day. Then let's talk about Mark Hill's day. His office lottery pool, which he regularly paid into, finally hit the big one, a $46 million jackpot. His co-workers were instantly minted as millionaires. Mark, however, had skipped that week's $2 contribution. His reason wasn't some noble protest, he just didn't have a dollar on him. He woke up the next morning with the same job, the same bills, and the soul-crushing knowledge that his failure to find a single dollar cost him a lifetime of wealth. That's not just bad luck, it's a cosmic joke with a punchline that stings forever. 9. You're sitting in the hot seat on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, staring at the final million-dollar question. You have one lifeline left. Phone a friend. Who do you call? A history professor? An expert? No, this contestant called his dad. And his father answered the phone with the kind of booming, unwavering certainty that can only come from a man who is 100% catastrophically wrong. The contestant, filled with filial faith, locked in the incorrect answer and watched his potential winnings get vaporized. He lost nearly $500,000, learning a very public, very expensive lesson. Sometimes father doesn't know best. 10. Let's establish a simple rule. If you find something that looks like a box of old dynamite, maybe don't immediately decide your only option is to blow it up. One man, fearing for his safety after discovering such a box, dutifully took it to a remote field and detonated it in a glorious explosion. He probably felt like a hero, saving the town from a potential disaster. He later discovered that the dynamite was actually a perfectly preserved collection of rare, vintage Cuban cigars worth over $50,000. He didn't just lose money, he literally turned a fortune into a puff of smoke out of sheer paranoia. 11. A Michigan woman on welfare won $1 million lottery, a life-changing event, but instead of getting off welfare, she just didn't report it. Then, because lightning sometimes strikes the same clueless person twice, she won a second, even bigger jackpot. The problem? When she went to claim her massive new prize, the state noticed she was still on their welfare rolls. They connected the dots and discovered her felony fraud from the first win. She went from being a double lottery winner to a convicted felon, losing everything and getting a free trip to prison. She had 2 golden tickets and managed to exchange them both for a jumpsuit. 12. For years, a Texas family had a painting hanging in their house that they assumed was a worthless replica. It was so disregarded that they let their kids use it for tennis practice against the wall. You can just picture it. An art expert eventually saw the piece and likely had a heart attack. It wasn't a replica. It was a long-lost Renaissance masterpiece by a Spanish master, worth over $30 million. Their children had been casually volleying tennis balls against a national treasure. It's probably the most expensive backboard in human history. 13. A woman in Quebec won a $13 million jackpot and immediately did what everyone dreams of doing. She quit her job in a spectacular blaze of glory. We can only imagine the glorious speech she gave her boss. There was just one tiny problem. She soon discovered her ex-boyfriend, with whom she had an oral agreement to split any winnings, had absolutely no intention of sharing a single cent. She was now unemployed, facing a legal battle, and had burned her professional bridges with the confidence of a millionaire she wasn't yet. She celebrated popping the champagne before the money was even in the bank. 14. Back in the 1980s, the candy giant Mars was offered a golden opportunity, a product placement deal for M&Ms in a new Steven Spielberg movie about a friendly alien. The executives at Mars, in a moment of historic corporate brain fade, passed on the offer. So Spielberg's team went to Hershey, who suggested Reese's Pieces instead. The movie, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, became a cultural phenomenon, and sales for Reese's Pieces exploded by over 65%. Mars had the chance to be the official candy of an iconic alien and basically said, "Nah, we're good." 15. Here is a uniquely modern form of torture. A German programmer owns a digital wallet containing 7,002 Bitcoin, currently worth around $240 million. The password to this colossal fortune is stored on an encrypted hard drive, and he's forgotten it. He has used 8 of his 10 password attempts. He now has just 2 guesses left before the drive erases itself, and his fortune is lost to the digital void forever. He is 2 typos away from turning a $240 million treasure into nothing more than an expensive paperweight. 16. A woman selling her house received a fantastic offer. The full asking price, all in cash, no strings attached. It was a dream scenario. But her greed circuits went into overdrive. Convinced she could spark a bidding war and squeeze out even more money, she rejected the perfect offer. And then, crickets. No other offers came. The market cooled, and she eventually had to sell her house months later for significantly less than the original cash offer she'd turned down. She had a winning hand and decided to throw her cards away, hoping for a better one that never came. 17. In 1963, a graphic designer named Harvey Ball was paid $45 to create a simple little drawing to boost employee morale. He drew the smiley face. He was paid his fee, and crucially, he never trademarked it. That simple doodle went on to become one of the most recognizable icons on the planet, generating billions upon billions of dollars in revenue for countless companies. Harvey Ball was left with his original $45. He literally created an icon of happiness for the entire world and died with a completely average bank account. 18. A construction worker stumbled upon the find of a lifetime, a bag containing $100,000 that had fallen from an armored truck. Finders keepers, right? He immediately launched into a spending spree, buying a new truck and showering friends with gifts. His fatal mistake? He paid for everything with the cash from the bag. Cash that was, of course, in sequentially numbered bills. He created a flawless paper trail for the FBI to follow directly to his door. He had the luck to find a fortune, but was too dumb to realize you can't just spend a bag of traceable money. 19. In the year 2000, a tiny, struggling DVD buy mail service called Netflix was on the verge of collapse. In a desperate move, they approached the undisputed king of home video, Blockbuster, and offered to be bought out for $50 million. The Blockbuster executives didn't just decline. They reportedly laughed them out of the room. It was one of the most catastrophic business blunders in history. Blockbuster effectively stood on the deck of the Titanic and laughed at a guy in a lifeboat, moments before hitting the iceberg that would later be named Netflix. 20. Televised poker is home to moments of pure genius and stone-cold bluffing. And then there's this. One player, radiating the kind of supreme confidence that borders on insanity, decided to go all in with a truly terrible hand. He was trying to push his opponent off a massive multi-million-dollar pot. The only problem? His opponent was holding one of the best possible hands in the game. What followed was a glorious, high-definition moment of televised arrogance meeting the buzzsaw of reality. In a single, excruciating hand, his mountain of chips and his ego were completely vaporized for the world to see. 21. There are hills you should die on, and then there are hills you should absolutely not die on. To win a completely trivial argument with his cousin, one man decided to prove his point by ripping a page out of an old comic book he had. That comic book just happened to be a near-mint copy of Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman. He triumphantly won the bet, silencing his cousin. In the process, he also instantly shredded over $100,000 in value. He proved his point, and in doing so, provided a much more important point to the rest of us, that he was a world-class, profoundly dedicated idiot. 22. Here is a perfect textbook example of snatching defeat directly from the jaws of victory. A British man won a lawsuit and was awarded £150,000. A fantastic outcome. But he was convinced he deserved more. So, in a fit of greed, he rejected the payout and appealed the decision. The new judge took a fresh look at the case and not only disagreed with the original verdict but reversed it entirely. To add insult to injury, the judge then ordered the man to pay the other side's legal costs. He walked into court a winner and walked out a loser in debt. 23. After inheriting a stamp collection valued at over $2 million, one man looked at the priceless artifacts and thought, these would look so much better without all this messy paper backing. So, with the meticulous care of a brain surgeon, he carefully soaked each and every stamp in water and peeled them off their envelopes. He single-handedly destroyed the collection's entire provenance and value. Collectors don't want just the stamp, they want the history. He didn't preserve a fortune, he gave it a bath and essentially washed $2 million right down the drain. 24. For decades, an Australian prospector used a massive, ridiculously heavy rock to prop open the door to his shack. It was just an ugly, annoying thing he tripped over constantly. After years of using it as a common doorstop, he finally got tired of stubbing his toe and had it analyzed. It turned out to be a 100-pound solid gold nugget, worth millions of dollars. The man's fortune wasn't buried in a remote mine. It was the thing he kicked out of the way every single day to get into his house. His incredible wealth wasn't at his doorstep, it was his doorstep. 25. Ronald Wayne was one of the 3 original founders of Apple, holding a 10% stake in the fledgling company. But he was nervous. He feared that if the company went into debt, he would be personally liable. So in 1976, he made the prudent decision to sell his entire stake for a grand total of $800. The company he co-founded, of course, went on to become one of the most valuable corporations in human history. He didn't just miss the boat, he helped design and build the rocket ship, then traded his captain's chair for enough cash to buy a bus ticket home. 26. A woman who won a $1 million lottery wanted to hide the ticket from her boyfriend for reasons we can only speculate about. She cleverly tucked it inside a copy of the classic novel, The Idiot. A perfect hiding place, right? Well, while she was out, her boyfriend, in a sudden fit of domestic responsibility, decided to do some spring cleaning. He gathered up a box of old books to donate to a local thrift shop, including, you guessed it, The Idiot. The universe has a strange sense of humor, and sometimes the irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. 27. After winning a $3 million lottery, a woman immediately began living the high life, at least in her mind. She planned the mansion, the sports car, the endless vacations. She did everything a new millionaire is supposed to do, except for the single most important 5-second task, signing the back of the ticket. She then proceeded to lose the unsigned ticket. Without a signature, anyone could claim it, making it impossible for her to prove it was hers. In an instant, her winning ticket went from a passport to a new life back to being a worthless, anonymous scrap of paper. 28. Faking your own death to collect insurance money is a high-stakes gamble that requires a brilliant plan. This Florida man's plan was not that. He staged a boating accident, disappearing and letting his family file the claim. The U.S. Coast Guard, taking it seriously, launched a massive search, costing taxpayers thousands of dollars. It didn't take long for authorities to find him very much alive, hiding out and waiting for his payday. He didn't get rich. He got arrested for fraud and a bill for the search party. He tried to scam the system and ended up with a criminal record and public humiliation. 29. An old, worn-out blanket that had been a gift years ago made for a perfect dog bed. At least that's what one woman thought for years as she watched her dog sleep, drool, and shed all over it. One day, she took it to be appraised on a television show, probably expecting to be told it was worthless. The expert on the show nearly fainted. The dog bed was an incredibly rare first-phase Navajo Chiefs blanket, a historical masterpiece worth over $1.5 million. For years, her very lucky dog had been sleeping on a fortune that belonged in a museum. 30. In the very early days of cryptocurrency, a man commissioned a simple animated video and paid the programmer 2 bitcoins for the job. At the time, this amounted to just a few dollars, a perfectly fair price for the work. But time has a funny way of recontextualizing things. Today, those 2 bitcoins would be worth a life-changing fortune. The animator who created the video wasn't cheated. He got paid exactly what was agreed upon. He just happened to be paid with what would become lottery tickets, which he unknowingly cashed in for pocket change to create a very, very expensive cartoon. 31. After discovering he owned a rare first edition copy of a Harry Potter book worth around $50,000, a man wanted to keep it safe. His genius idea for a secure storage location? His freezer. He tucked it in between some frozen peas and went on vacation, confident his treasure was protected. He returned home to discover there had been a power outage. The freezer had defrosted and then refrozen, leaving him with a warped, soggy, ice-encrusted block of worthless paper. He tried to protect his book from the world and ended up waterboarding it to death himself. 32. In a desperate quest for internet fame, a man decided to deep-fry a whole turkey indoors and film it for a viral video. As anyone with a functioning brainstem could have predicted, the pot of boiling oil erupted into a massive grease fire. He got his viral video, all right. It was a perfect recording of his kitchen catching fire, the fire department's arrival, and the subsequent thousands of dollars in water damage to his apartment. He achieved his dream of going viral, but the cost of his 15 minutes of fame was a massive, insurance-unfriendly repair bill. 33. Getting a famous author to sign a copy of their book is a dream for many fans and usually increases its value. Usually, a woman was ecstatic to find a pristine, untouched first edition copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. She then managed to meet the reclusive author, Harper Lee, who graciously signed it for her. In doing so, she accidentally tanked its value. For high-end collectors, a truly valuable first edition must be in its original, untouched state. That personal signature, meant to increase its worth, was seen as graffiti, slashing its price on the collector's market. 34. TV journalist John Stossel was an early adopter of cryptocurrency, sort of. He was given 10 bitcoins back when they were practically worthless. Like many, he didn't take it seriously and promptly lost the password to his digital wallet. Years later, as the value skyrocketed, he did a segment on his show about crypto. He interviewed an expert who, upon hearing Stossel's story of losing his password, openly mocked him for his carelessness on national television. He didn't just lose a fortune. He was professionally roasted for his own monumental blunder on his own show. 35. Discovering a rare Nintendo game cartridge worth over $20,000 in your attic is like winning the geek lottery. All you have to do is nothing. Just don't mess with it. This man, however, decided his priceless artifact needed a little cleaning. Instead of using compressed air, he opted for the brilliant technique of polishing the delicate internal contacts with steel wool. He didn't clean it. He scoured it, successfully sanding away the delicate circuitry and every last dollar of its value. In a matter of minutes, he transformed a valuable collectible from the 90s into a completely worthless piece of 90s plastic. 36. The prize was a lifetime supply of chocolate. It sounds like a dream straight out of Willy Wonka. The winner had the option to take a cash annuity, a sensible yearly payment worth thousands. But no, she insisted on the literal prize. The company, legally obligated, delivered. A massive truck arrived and unloaded thousands of pounds of candy onto her property. She was instantly faced with a logistical nightmare. No way to store it, sell it, or possibly eat it before it all melted, spoiled, and attracted every ant in a 5-state radius. She won her dream prize and was immediately defeated by it. 37. In 1999, a tech-savvy man noticed that the domain name for Google.com had somehow expired, so he bought it. For one glorious, surreal minute, he owned Google. He was the king of the internet, holding the digital keys to the entire kingdom. He could have demanded an obscene fortune, a king's ransom. Instead, he did the noble thing and reported the security lapse back to the company. They thanked him for his honesty and gave him a small financial reward. He held the entire internet hostage for 60 seconds and, when it was over, basically just asked for bus fare home. 38. Corporate blunders don't get much bigger than this. In 1997, the multi-billion-dollar behemoth Disney simply forgot to renew the domain name for their search engine, go.com. A college student, likely procrastinating on his homework, noticed the lapse and snapped it up for a measly $70. Suddenly, a kid in a dorm room owned a piece of Disney's digital real estate. Disney, with its army of lawyers and infinite resources, had to negotiate and pay a fortune to get its own name back from a student who was simply paying more attention than their entire IT department. 39. A restaurant owner in China heard that one of his employees had won a massive lottery jackpot. Fearing the new millionaire would become lazy and unmotivated, the boss preemptively fired him. This turned out to be a catastrophic miscalculation. The newly unemployed and now very rich ex-employee took his millions and, in a beautiful act of poetic justice, opened a brand new state-of-the-art competing restaurant directly across the street. The boss didn't just lose an employee, he created his own number one, extremely well-funded and highly motivated rival. 40. Before Disney World arrived, Central Florida was mostly cheap swampland and orange groves. As Disney secretly bought up massive tracts of land, one stubborn farmer refused to sell his property. He was going to hold out for a bigger payday, convinced they'd have to meet his price. Instead, Disney just built their magical kingdom entirely around his property. He wasn't bought out for a fortune. He was simply isolated. His valuable farmland became a roadside fruit stand on the edge of a global tourist destination, a lonely monument to holding out just a little too long. 41. Winning $1 million lottery opens up a world of possibilities. You could travel, invest, or retire. This man's dream was a little different. He wanted to become a professional wrestler, and he pursued this dream with gusto, spending nearly all his winnings on elaborate costumes, flashy pyrotechnics, training, and self-produced wrestling events that almost no one attended. He didn't invest his money in stocks. He invested it in spandex and folding chairs. In the end, he successfully and quite literally wrestled his entire fortune into oblivion. 42. Belgian artist Wim Delvoye is famous for tattooing live pigs with intricate designs, like the Louis Vuitton logo, and selling them as living, breathing works of art for six-figure sums. It's a weird world. One farmer who owned one of these mobile masterpieces wasn't quite up to date on the contemporary art scene. He mistook the elaborate tattoo for a strange and worrying skin disease. So, being a practical farmer, he did the practical thing and promptly sent the $1 million pig to the slaughterhouse. A priceless piece of art was turned into bacon because of a simple and very expensive misunderstanding. 43. Joe and Marge Sutherland won a $15 million jackpot, then immediately misplaced the ticket. A frantic, house-destroying search began. After tearing apart their home, they finally remembered where they put it for safekeeping. They had pinned it to a bulletin board in the kitchen. A bulletin board they had methodically cleared off and thrown in the trash weeks earlier as part of a spring cleaning blitz. Their ticket to a new life, their $15 million, ended up buried under coffee grounds and old newspapers in a municipal landfill, a victim of their own tidiness. 44. After winning the lottery, one man decided the best way to celebrate was to buy a large quantity of cocaine and throw a massive party at his house. The celebration was apparently going great, right up until the point that his house exploded. It turned out there was a gas leak, which was ignited by his drug use. He miraculously survived, but in one spectacular evening of catastrophic stupidity, he managed to lose his house, his remaining winnings, and his freedom when the police arrived. It was a trifecta of failure. 45. Unearthing an ancient hoard of Roman coins is the dream of every treasure hunter. It's a priceless connection to history. Unless, of course, you decide history could use a little improvement. One treasure hunter, unhappy with the coin's 2,000-year-old patina, decided to make them shinier by cleaning them with acid. The acid didn't just make them shiny, it completely corroded their delicate surfaces, erasing the intricate historical markings and turning a priceless archaeological find into a pile of worthless pitted metal discs. 46. A woman in Brazil found a large crystalline rock on her property and became instantly convinced it was a massive diamond. Geologists and experts repeatedly told her it was just common quartz, essentially worthless. But she refused to believe them, convinced they were all part of a grand conspiracy to trick her out of her fortune. She spent the rest of her life guarding her worthless rock, alienating family and friends with her obsession. She died broke, clinging to her diamond, having chosen a life of proud delusion over one of comfortable reality. 47. On May 22, 2010, a programmer named Laszlo Hanyecz made history. He broadcast a request on a forum. He would trade 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 large pizzas. Someone in England accepted the deal. While he gets credit for conducting the first real-world transaction with cryptocurrency, he also earned a permanent, painful legacy. At today's prices, those 10,000 Bitcoins are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He will forever be known as the man who paid the price of a private jet for a couple of pepperoni pizzas. 48. Winning a $45,000 sports car in a contest is an incredible thrill. The letter from the IRS that comes later, however, is not. The winner was suddenly hit with a massive income tax bill for the value of the car. Unable to afford the thousands of dollars in taxes and unable to sell the car quickly enough to cover the bill, he was forced to do the unthinkable. He had to forfeit the prize. He experienced the momentary joy of winning a luxury car, and all he walked away with was a painful lesson in federal tax law. 49. In 1999, the search engine giant Yahoo had an opportunity. 2 Stanford students offered to license their new search technology, called Google, for a mere $1 million. They said no. A few years later, the tables had turned. Those same students, now running a rapidly growing Google, offered to sell their entire company to Yahoo for $5 billion. And again, in a moment of historic corporate blindness, Yahoo said no. They had not 1 but 2 chances to own the future of the internet, and they confidently fumbled the ball both times. The list ends at 49, but human stupidity is infinite. Now it's your turn. Give us your best fact number 50 in the comments below. The most tragic, facepalm-worthy story of a missed fortune you've ever heard. If you enjoy a healthy dose of other people's misfortune, that subscribe button is your new best friend. And a thumbs up is always cheaper than a bad investment.